If David is the heir, then why does Harrison keep every original trust document? The question came from Ethan, and the moment those words left his mouth, every conversation in the room seemed to stop. Crystal glasses rested untouched on the long oak table. The soft music playing through hidden speakers suddenly felt too loud. Beneath the glow of the chandeliers, the Whitmore family sat frozen inside the massive dining room of the estate that had belonged to the family for generations. I remained seated beneath the center chandelier, carefully watching faces instead of listening to excuses. Across the table, David forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. Beside him, Isabel continued pouring wine with practiced elegance, but her hand paused for a fraction of a second. Most people would never have noticed. I did. At the far end of the table sat Harrison Cole. His silver hair looked as untamed as ever. His faded denim shirt seemed out of place among tailored suits and designer dresses. Yet unlike everyone else, he appeared completely calm. That alone troubled me. Family celebrations usually followed a familiar pattern. Speeches, toasts, predictions about the future. Tonight's gathering was supposed to celebrate David's growing leadership role within the family business. For years, everyone had treated him as the inevitable heir to the Whitmore legacy. The assumption had become so accepted that nobody questioned it anymore. Nobody except Ethan. That is a strange question, Victoria said sharply from her seat near the fireplace. Ethan shrugged. Maybe, but nobody answered it. Silence returned. David looked toward Isabel. Isabel looked toward Thomas Bennett. Thomas adjusted his glasses and reached for his water. Nobody looked at Harrison. It was almost as if they were afraid to. I had spent decades protecting family traditions, preserving memories, and maintaining peace whenever possible. Yet sitting there that evening, I felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. Not about David. Not about Ethan. About the story itself. Families pass down more than money. They pass down narratives. Some are true. Others survive simply because nobody is willing to challenge them. As dinner continued, conversations slowly returned, but the atmosphere never recovered. The laughter sounded forced. The smiles felt rehearsed. Every person in that room seemed to be protecting something. When dessert was served, I noticed Harrison quietly stand and leave through a side door without saying goodbye. Nobody stopped him. Nobody asked where he was going. And somehow that bothered me more than Ethan's question. Because for the first time, I found myself wondering whether the heir everyone trusted was only part of the story, and whether the man everyone ignored had been carrying the truth all along. The celebration ended shortly after 10 o'clock, but the question Ethan had asked refused to leave the room. Even after the guests departed and the staff cleared the table, I could still feel it lingering inside the walls of Whitmore Estate. Families like ours survive because people know which questions should never be asked. Ethan had ignored that rule. The next morning, I found him in the library. The room smelled faintly of old paper and polished wood. Sunlight filtered through tall windows overlooking the eastern gardens. He stood beside a large table covered with books and estate records. When he saw me, he closed a folder a little too quickly. "You did not sleep much either, did you?" I asked. He smiled. "Was it that obvious?" I walked toward the fireplace. "You are investigating something." Ethan hesitated. Then he nodded. "Grandma, have you ever wondered why Harrison keeps his own copies of family documents?" I looked at him carefully. Everyone wonders that. Nobody talks about it. Ethan opened the folder again. Inside were copies of trust summaries, board meeting notes, and old estate correspondence. Most appeared ordinary. One document did not. A letter dated nearly 23 years earlier contained a list of individuals authorized to review certain family records. Harrison's name appeared near the top. My eyes returned to it immediately. "Where did you find this?" I asked. "In a storage cabinet that should have been empty." That answer unsettled me. Important documents rarely disappear by accident. Important documents are hidden by people, with reasons. Before I could respond, the library door opened. James entered carrying a tray with coffee. The moment he noticed the papers on the table, his expression changed. It lasted less than a second, but I saw it. Concern. Real concern. "Good morning," he said quietly. Ethan folded the documents. James placed the tray down and turned toward the door. "James," I said. He stopped. "How long have you known Harrison?" For a moment, he seemed to choose his words carefully, long enough to know that most people misunderstand him. Then he left without another explanation. Ethan and I exchanged a glance. Neither of us spoke. Outside the window, a black sedan slowly entered the estate through the front gate. Thomas Bennett had arrived. It was barely 9 in the morning. Family attorneys do not make unexpected visits unless something requires attention. As the car disappeared behind the hedges, a thought entered my mind that I could not ignore. Perhaps Ethan had been asking the wrong question. Perhaps the mystery was not why Harrison held the documents. Perhaps the mystery was why everyone else had spent years pretending that he should not. Thomas Bennett rarely visited Whitmore Estate without warning. That fact alone made his arrival impossible to ignore. From the library window, Ethan and I watched the black sedan come to a stop near the front entrance. Thomas stepped out carrying the same worn leather briefcase he had carried for as long as I could remember. At 73 years old, he moved carefully but never slowly. Men like Thomas spent decades protecting other people's secrets. They learned the value of patience. "Do you think he knows?" Ethan asked. "About what?" I replied. Ethan glanced toward the folder resting on the table. "About Harrison." I did not answer immediately. Instead, I watched Thomas climb the front steps. Something about the timing felt wrong. The family celebration had barely ended. Yet here he was on a Saturday morning. Whatever brought him here was important. 20 minutes later, I found myself walking through the West Wing corridor. The estate was unusually quiet. Most family members were still asleep or pretending to be. As I passed a partially open sitting room door, I heard voices. One belonged to Thomas. The other belonged to Isabel. I stopped without meaning to. "The situation is becoming difficult to manage," Isabel said quietly. "Then perhaps it should not have been managed for this long," Thomas replied. Silence followed. My pulse slowed. Experience had taught me that important truths often arrive hidden inside ordinary conversations. "Ethan is asking questions," Isabel continued. "Ethan is not the problem," Thomas said. "The documents are." I remained perfectly still. A chair moved across the floor inside the room. Then the conversation ended. I continued walking before either of them noticed my presence. By afternoon, the estate felt different. Staff members whispered. Doors closed more quickly than usual. Even David seemed distracted. During lunch, I noticed him staring repeatedly toward the distant guest cottage near the edge of the property. Harrison lived there alone. He always had. Yet nobody ever explained why a man with access to family trusts and legal records chose to live apart from everyone else. Later that day, Ethan entered my sitting room carrying a small cardboard box. Dust covered the lid. "Look what I found," he said. Inside were old photographs, newspaper clippings, and estate event programs dating back more than 20 years. At first they appeared harmless. Then I noticed something strange. Harrison appeared in nearly every major family event. Charity galas, holiday gatherings, business celebrations. Yet in every photograph, he stood at the edge of the frame. Never beside the family. Never included in official captions. It was as if someone wanted him present, but invisible. I picked up one photograph and studied it carefully. On the back, written in faded ink, were 6 words that immediately unsettled me. "Harrison knows what the family forgot." The words stayed with me for the rest of the day. Harrison knows what the family forgot. I turned the photograph over several times, hoping another explanation would appear. None did. By evening, rain clouds had gathered above the estate, casting long shadows across the grounds. From the library window, I could see the small guest cottage where Harrison lived. A single light glowed through the front window. He was home. For years, I had accepted his presence without understanding it. Now that ignorance felt deliberate. After dinner, I walked through the quiet halls of Whitmore Estate toward the archive room hidden behind the library. Most family members avoided it. The room contained decades of records, financial reports, correspondence, and family history. If answers existed anywhere, they would be there. The heavy door opened with a soft creak. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Boxes filled entire walls. I began searching through records connected to the period when Harrison first appeared in family documents. At first, everything seemed ordinary. Property records, meeting summaries, trust amendments. Then I noticed something unusual. Several files were missing. Not misplaced. Removed. Empty spaces remained between folders arranged with perfect precision. Someone had taken specific records while leaving everything around them untouched. That required intention. I photographed the shelves before continuing. Nearly an hour later, I found a ledger hidden inside an unmarked storage box. The pages listed estate expenditures from more than 20 years ago. One entry immediately caught my attention. Monthly payments had been made to Harrison for years. The amount was significant, far more than a consulting fee, far more than a salary. Yet no explanation accompanied the transactions. My eyes moved down the page. The authorization signature appeared at the bottom. Thomas Bennett. I closed the ledger slowly. Earlier that day, Thomas had argued that documents were becoming difficult to manage. Now I understood why. The problem was not the documents themselves. The problem was what they revealed. As I returned the ledger to the box, footsteps echoed beyond the archive room door. I froze. The handle moved slightly, then stopped. A moment later, the footsteps retreated down the hallway. Whoever had been outside never entered. When I finally emerged from the archive room, the library was empty except for one person. Harrison stood beside the fireplace holding an old book. He looked up as I entered. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then he nodded toward the archive room behind me and said quietly, "Some records were hidden to protect the wrong people." Before I could ask what he meant, he closed the book and walked away, leaving me alone with a question that suddenly felt far more dangerous than any answer. The next morning, I could not stop thinking about what Harrison had said. Some records were hidden to protect the wrong people. The sentence followed me through breakfast, through conversations, and through the quiet routines that normally kept Whitmore Estate predictable. By noon, I found myself watching people more carefully than ever before. The strange thing about secrets is that once you know they exist, ordinary behavior suddenly stops looking ordinary. That afternoon, Isabel hosted a planning meeting for an upcoming charity event in the West sitting room. Everything appeared perfectly normal. Floral arrangements covered the tables. Guest lists were reviewed. Donation figures were discussed. Yet beneath her polished smile, I sensed tension. Isabel had always been composed. She could manage a room better than anyone I knew. But today, small cracks were beginning to show. When Thomas Bennett entered carrying a folder, she immediately stopped speaking. When Harrison's name appeared during a discussion about family representatives, she changed the subject. Twice. By the third time, even Ethan noticed. Later, after most people left, Ethan joined me on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the estate grounds. Harrison's cottage stood in the distance beyond a row of oak trees. "She is hiding something," Ethan said. "Who?" I asked, although I already knew. "Isabel." I remained silent. Ethan continued. "Every time Harrison comes up, she gets nervous." The observation matched my own. For years, Isabel had controlled information as carefully as she controlled appearances. She always knew which details to emphasize and which to ignore. But now the effort seemed harder, almost desperate. That evening, an unexpected opportunity appeared. James approached me as dinner. Preparations were underway. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said quietly, "I found something that may interest you." He handed me an old guest registry from nearly 25 years ago. At first, it looked harmless. Names, dates, signatures. Then I noticed a section that had been altered. One name had been carefully removed. Not crossed out. Removed entirely. Whoever did it wanted no trace left behind. Yet a faint impression remained on the page beneath. Just enough to read several letters. My heartbeat slowed as I studied them. The partial name did not belong to David. It did not belong to Isabel. It did not belong to anyone currently recognized within the family hierarchy. Before I could examine it further, I heard voices approaching from the hallway. I closed the registry immediately. A second later, Isabel entered the room. Her eyes moved from me to the book in my hands. For the first time since I had known her, her smile disappeared completely. Isabel recovered quickly. By the time dinner began, her usual composure had returned, but I could not forget the expression I had seen when she noticed the registry. It was not anger. It was fear. Real fear. The kind people experience when something carefully hidden risks being exposed. Throughout the meal, I watched her more closely than I listened to the conversation. David discussed business projections. Victoria criticized a renovation proposal. Ethan remained unusually quiet. Harrison sat at the far end of the table, saying almost nothing. Yet every few minutes, I caught Isabel glancing toward him. The pattern repeated often enough that it stopped feeling accidental. After dinner, Ethan knocked on my sitting room door carrying a laptop and several printed documents. The excitement in his eyes immediately caught my attention. Sophia found something, he said. He spread the papers across a small table beside the fireplace. At first glance, the documents appeared unrelated. Property transfers, trust amendments, historical filings. Then he pointed to a series of dates. Look at the timing. I studied the records carefully. Nearly 24 years earlier, several unusual changes had occurred within a period of only a few weeks. Ownership structures shifted. Access permissions changed. Certain names disappeared from official records while new protections were quietly added. None of it made sense on its own. Together, however, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Someone had rewritten part of the family's history. Sophia thinks these changes were connected, Ethan said. Connected to what? I asked. Ethan hesitated. A missing person. The room suddenly felt quieter. Rain tapped softly against the windows as he handed me another document. This one contained references to an individual whose name appeared repeatedly before vanishing completely from later records. No explanation. No public acknowledgement. Nothing. It was as though that person had been carefully erased. My eyes moved across the page again. Then I noticed something else. Several of the authorizations linked to those changes had been approved by people who still held influence within the family today. The secret was not being protected by one person. It had been protected by many. Later that evening, I stepped onto the terrace overlooking the estate grounds. The guest cottage stood beyond the trees, illuminated by a single porch light. Harrison was outside, sitting alone in a wooden chair. Even from a distance, he looked as though he had been expecting this moment for years. Then my phone vibrated. A message from Sophia appeared on the screen. Only 7 words. We found the missing names connection. I stared at the message while the rain continued falling across the dark estate. For the first time, I began to suspect that the person erased from family history might be the key to everything. The following morning began with a phone call from Sophia. Her voice was calm, but I could hear urgency beneath it. I think you should come to the office, she said. There are documents I would rather show you in person. 2 hours later, Ethan and I sat across from Sophia in a conference room high above the city. Rain clouds drifted beyond the glass walls. A stack of folders rested on the table between us. Sophia opened the first one carefully. The missing name was not removed randomly, she said. It was connected to a branch of the family that disappeared from official records. Ethan leaned forward. Why would someone erase an entire branch of the family? Sophia exchanged a glance with me before answering. Because acknowledging it would have changed the succession plan. The room fell silent. She slid several documents toward us. Birth records, trust amendments, private correspondence. The dates matched the same period we had been investigating. For years, family history had been presented as a straight line. Now it looked more like a carefully edited manuscript. Entire pages had been removed. My eyes stopped on a familiar surname, Whitmore. Beside it appeared another name I had never seen before, one that had vanished from every official family history. Who was this person? I asked. Sophia folded her hands. Someone whose existence created a problem for the people controlling the estate. Ethan exhaled slowly, meaning the inheritance was never as simple as everyone believed. Sophia nodded. On the drive back to Whitmore Estate, neither Ethan nor I spoke much. Too many pieces were shifting at once. By the time we reached the estate gates, evening shadows had settled across the grounds. As we entered the main house, we found David standing alone in the library. He looked exhausted. Papers covered the desk in front of him. When he saw us, he immediately closed one of the folders. That reaction told me more than any explanation. Everything all right? I asked. David forced a smile. Just business. Ethan looked at the closed folder. Business seems very popular in this family lately. David did not laugh. After he left, Ethan walked around the desk and noticed a single sheet of paper that had slipped onto the floor. He picked it up before I could stop him. Both of us stared at the page. It was a family tree. Several names had been highlighted. One branch ended abruptly as if someone had intentionally cut it away. Yet written beside that missing branch were 2 words that changed everything. Eligible heir. Ethan looked at me. I looked back at him. For the first time, we were no longer searching for evidence that a lie existed. We were staring directly at proof that someone had spent decades protecting it. The discovery changed everything. Until that moment, the possibility of deception had existed only as suspicion. Now it existed on paper. Eligible heir. The words remained fixed in my mind long after Ethan returned the document to David's desk. We left the library without speaking. Neither of us wanted to risk being overheard. By the following morning, tension had spread throughout Whitmore Estate like an approaching storm. Conversations ended when certain people entered a room. Staff members avoided eye contact. Even family meals felt different. The illusion of unity was beginning to crack. At lunch, the fractures became impossible to ignore. David arrived late and appeared distracted. Isabel maintained her usual elegance, but her attention seemed fixed on everyone except the food in front of her. Victoria sat beside the fireplace with her arms crossed, watching the room carefully. Harrison remained at the far end of the table, calm as always. The contrast between his composure and everyone else's anxiety grew more noticeable every day. Halfway through the meal, Ethan asked a simple question. Has anyone reviewed the family succession records recently? The reaction was immediate. Isabel lowered her fork. Victoria looked toward David. Thomas, who had joined the lunch unexpectedly, removed his glasses and cleaned lenses that did not need cleaning. Nobody answered. That silence was answer enough. Later that afternoon, Ethan and I met Sophia in the estate library. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows while stacks of documents covered the long table between us. Sophia had spent the previous night tracing connections through archived legal filings. What she found was worse than either of us expected. The missing branch was not removed once, she said quietly. It was removed repeatedly. She showed us copies from different years, different documents, different revisions. Yet each time, the same names disappeared. The pattern was deliberate, organized, sustained over decades. That means multiple people knew, Ethan said. Sophia nodded. And multiple people benefited. The room fell silent. I looked toward the fireplace where family portraits lined the mantel. Generations of Whitmores stared back from gilded frames. For years, those portraits represented continuity and tradition. Now they looked like evidence. As evening approached, a message arrived from Thomas Bennett. He requested that every member of the family attend a private meeting the following day in the grand dining room. No explanation accompanied the invitation. None was necessary. Across the table, Ethan slowly lowered his phone. Sophia closed her folder. I felt something settle inside me. Not fear. Certainty. The truth had moved beyond rumors, hidden records, and whispered conversations. Whatever secret had shaped this family for decades was finally approaching the moment when it could no longer remain hidden from the people whose lives it had defined. The family gathered in the grand dining room at 10 o'clock sharp. Gray morning light filtered through the tall windows, illuminating the long oak table where generations of Whitmores had celebrated victories, negotiated disagreements, and protected secrets. Today felt different. Nobody arrived early. Nobody lingered. One by one, they entered and took their seats. David sat near the center of the table, visibly exhausted. Isabel appeared composed, but the confidence she once carried so effortlessly seemed thinner now. Victoria remained silent beside the fireplace. Ethan stood near the staircase before finally taking his seat. Harrison occupied his familiar place at the far end of the table. I sat beneath the chandelier and waited. Thomas Bennett opened his leather briefcase and removed several folders. The room became completely still. For many years, he began, certain family records were intentionally withheld from public trust documentation. Nobody interrupted. Thomas continued. He explained how a branch of the Whitmore family had been removed from official succession records decades earlier. Legal filings had been revised. Historical references had disappeared. Eligibility records had been altered. The pattern Sophia discovered was real. The missing branch had not vanished naturally. It had been erased. David stared at the documents in front of him. Isabel lowered her eyes. Ethan remained focused on every word. Then Thomas revealed the final piece. The individual connected to the removed branch possessed a legitimate claim that should have been recognized from the beginning. The original succession structure had been changed to avoid a conflict powerful family members feared would divide the estate. Ironically, the concealment created a far greater division than the truth ever would have. Silence settled across the room. Then Harrison slowly stood. For the first time since this began, every eye turned toward him. People spent years protecting a story, he said quietly. Eventually they forgot it was only a story. Nobody challenged him. Nobody could. The documents on the table spoke for themselves. Ethan looked toward me. I saw understanding in his eyes. The mystery that began with a simple question had finally reached its answer. Not every detail would heal overnight. Not every relationship would survive unchanged. But the foundation of the deception had collapsed. As family members absorbed the truth, I looked around the room that had witnessed generations of carefully managed appearances. The greatest inheritance was never money, property, or status. It was truth. And after decades of silence, the truth had finally reclaimed its place at the table.